Some of my writers come to me and they have a feeling that something's not working in their book. I mean, in fact, that's why many writers come to me, because they're like, I've done all the things, I have all the things happening, but I feel like my book is not unputdownable. I feel like my reader doesn't really care about what's happening next. There's just no mystery about what's happening next. Things are just kind of happening, and they're happening in some sort of a vacuum. Enter suspense. Listen, my friends, suspense is not just for mystery and thriller novels. Suspense is the thing that adds urgency and questions to the experience of reading your book. That is what makes your book unputdownable. Right? There's an art and a science to creating scenes that build up suspense, and that's why I thought it would be really important to break it all down for you in this episode. This is one of those skills. If you can master suspense in your writing, whether it's, literary fiction or it is a thriller, if you can master suspense and use it as the tool that it is, you are definitely going to be head and shoulders above other authors. So let's get started talking about suspense. First of all, we're going to talk about what is suspense? Why do all kinds of books need it? We're going to be talking about what suspense is, what different types of suspense could look like in different genres, and then we're going to just do the nitty-gritty of how to create it. We're going to talk about some things like foreshadowing, pacing, and then some big suspense mistakes, such as when red herrings, which are misdirection, when those are done wrong, that can sink your whole entire book so soon. So I want to help you to stop making those mistakes and to start doing suspense right. Now, if you are a Writing Coach on Demand member, you are going to be getting some bonus materials and an extra piece to this episode where you're going to be learning a psychological trick to amping up the suspense in your book. If you are not a Writing Coach on Demand person, you might want to go check out my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com, and go check on that information on the Writing Coach on Demand. It's less than $1 a day, and you get so much added value, including office hours with me, your writing coach, for less than $1 a day. That's crazy. And you get discounts on all my courses, including the upcoming course From Idea to Published in 6 months, which comes out very, very soon. If you're a writer dreaming of becoming a successful author, join me, writing coach Karenna Akavane, on the How to Be an Author podcast, your weekly source for writing information, inspiration, and motivation. Thank you so much for joining me on the How to Be an Author podcast. Let's talk suspense. So important. I love a good suspense book, don't you? I love it because suspense really puts these characters that you care so much about in the book, it puts them in this anticipated jeopardy, that, it's a threat, something that might happen. So we're hoping that it's not going to happen. We're hoping that our character is going to be A-okay, but worrying about them, wondering what's going to happen, that is such an enjoyable thing. That's what makes a book unputdownable. So suspense is all about making big promises to your reader about something that could or might happen, and hopefully making your reader want your main character to rise above and not be impacted too negatively. Suspense is about raising the stakes. Suspense is about setting reader expectations and then controlling the flow of information. It's a very masterful thing, right? You control the information, how much you reveal. When are you going to reveal certain things? How are those things going to be revealed? All of that is really crucial, right? Establishing suspense in the right way is all about going through a series of little steps, right? It's breaking your book down so that each step of the way gives your reader extra reasons to keep reading. So in a previous episode, we talked about the inciting incident that sets this big question of, my character has to go do this thing now. Will they or won't they manage to do this thing? But along the way, when we're setting obstacles and we're creating scenes, we're going to want to have these small components with suspense that create this engine that push each chapter forward and keeps the reader reading along the way. And I'm going to break down exactly how to do this. But first, let's talk about what we really need for suspense to work, because there are too many times that a writer's like, I tried to make a suspense novel and I just couldn't, it's too confusing. I don't know what's not working. Well, let me tell you, there is quite a general, unique, there's an overarching way that you can do suspense, but there's some typical mistakes that many writers make, and I've seen these so I can help you to kind of fix them preemptively. So the first suspense kind of mistake, or the first thing you need in order to have good suspense, is that you really need to care about the character. Right? So this is something that we established before the inciting incident already. We want to be faced with a character that we can relate to, a character that we can empathize with, a character who's got strengths and weaknesses. They are nuanced, they are human, and they have these things that they want, and we want them to have them. So that's really, really important. And your character is really crucial, because your character, we talk about strengths and weaknesses all the time. And I think that that's something that you know that your character needs to have, but really you don't really know. I keep saying things like, well, it helps the reader to relate to them. Okay, cool. That's one component of the strengths and weaknesses, but you know what else they do? They basically make it that your character is equipped to actually attain their goal, maybe, but they're not so strong that that's a foregone conclusion. That's really, really important. So you need that question to be there. My character is really cool and all, but can they actually pull this off? Important. Another thing that you can also do is give that character a sense of being isolated in a way, or of having no way out of their situation. Because how realistic is it for a character with all the choices in the world to keep going on a dangerous route? That's not really very realistic, especially like if your character wants something and they've got a gazillion friends and they live someplace where they have every resource in the world and everything's super easy. Well, then they're not going to have to rely on themselves and on their own strengths, and they're not going to have to be devastated by their weaknesses. So there's not very much suspense. So your setting can definitely help amp up the suspense, because it makes your character have to rely on themselves and on the tools that they have been given or that they are developing. Now, the next thing that we really need to have in order for our suspense to work well is that we need high stakes. Now, I've talked about high stakes before. High stakes are not just the world's going to blow up. High stakes can be my boyfriend's going to break up with me and it's going to ruin my life because I really count on him for my mental health. And if he breaks up with me, I might quit school, and then, that's going to be really terrible, right? So we need to know the stakes. What's really dangerous about this situation that my character is in overall, and in each scene that is a bit suspenseful? What are they going to lose? What is this going to impact? How is this going to destroy, their progress towards their goal if this suspenseful thing that we've been teasing actually happens? That's really important. So high stakes, high suspense. Also, you need to create escalating tension leading up to this possible event, right? Remember, this event is just possible. It might not happen, but you need to have the right amount of pacing. I see too many writers make this mistake where they hint at this event that could be terrible, but there's all this action, all this violence all over. There's people dying left, right, and center, and it falls flat because you really want emotional resonance, and you need to have the pacing. In fact, instead of speeding up sometimes, you might want to have your pacing slowing down, and you might want to be digging deeper into the emotional implications of what might happen and the mood and the tension as you go. That could be a much more effective way of ramping up suspense. So we'll talk more about this in a second, but that's really, really important. So suspense is that balance between telling the reader what's happening and withholding information. And this is something that we're going to be talking about in a second, this withholding information thing. Yes, you withhold information, but you can't unfairly withhold information. You can't withhold information in a gratuitous way. This is one of those big mistakes, but let's just keep going for a second. We'll talk about that very, very soon. So what are the things that suspense does other than keeping your reader reading? Suspense creates this kind of puzzle for your reader to solve. Maybe it could do that. Like, what's going to happen? And why does this matter? Why is this situation happening? Why is this important for the book? That's kind of fun. Suspense also really does set the mood or help to set the mood, and also the mood impacts suspense, right? So if you've got a book that's kind of in a sinister thing, that suspense is going to be sinister suspense, right? Something supernatural might happen, or there might be a dangerous person coming up, or, your character might have this terrible, nightmare or frightening experience. Who knows, right? But suspense can definitely help to amp up that mood. When there's a time pressure, keep in mind that that's a really key ingredient of suspense. That fills the reader with urgency. So some of the suspenseful elements might be, will my character get to what they want and need in time? So a way of building up that suspense is to create these obstacles that waste time for your character, hence putting them in a less and less likely situation to actually achieve their goal because time is running out. Pretty interesting, right? There's also the physical danger. Many suspense novels really focus on physical danger. And I think that's realistic, right? We all try to avoid physical danger, right? We all try to avoid getting hurt, getting killed, getting, our leg hacked off, all of those things we try to avoid. And that definitely grips the reader. But remember that there are such things as macro stakes and micro stakes. So think of the external stakes and the internal stakes. So your physical danger, it wouldn't be so dangerous other than the fear of momentary pain if it wasn't for how it's going to emotionally affect you and the people around you, or rather your character and the people around your character, for the rest of the world of your story, right? And also think about the macro stakes, like, okay, the world's going to blow up, but micro stakes, that means that your character is not going to be able to see their baby who is just born, right? That little emotional stake, beyond just the physical danger of I'm going to blow up in this cataclysmic thing, what does that mean? In something that your reader can emotionally identify with. Having great suspense is creating these expectations of something really, really bad possibly happening, and really going into detail as to how bad it's going to be. That's really important because that's what really triggers the dread in your reader. So you want to have the reader know exactly how bad things could possibly get. Worst case scenario, how's that going to feel for your main character? That's where the suspense really starts to work really, really well. Now, one of the tools that people use to create suspense is foreshadowing. And I'm going to really devote some time talking about this in this episode because foreshadowing is so easily done wrong, and that's a big problem. So foreshadowing is not there to create spoilers for what's going to happen, right? Foreshadowing is there to create suspense and tension. So it needs to be subtle. When you think foreshadowing, yeah, it's a shadow. It is subtle. It is hidden in plain sight. It is there to get your reader more engaged because they sense that there's something more, right, to a little detail. They sense that there's something that they should have noticed here. They sense that, ooh, I should be paying attention. There is something going on, but it's not something where you're ramming it down their throats. Right? Having foreshadowing done right makes that plot twist that kind of turns that suspense on its head. That makes the plot twist or the reveal, like maybe you're dreading that your character is going to fall into this pit and you foreshadowed this thing. They had an extra shoelace in their pocket or something, and they make this amazing tool from their shoelace that avoids their falling into the pit, right? Then the reader is going to be like, damn, I should have realized, or, oh my God. But that makes it more satisfying without ramming it down their throat, like being like, oh, they have a shoelace in their pocket that they could use to get out of a pit. That is foreshadowing done wrong, right? You don't want the reader to roll their eyes and be like, wow, that was obvious, right? But how do you hide this foreshadowing that's going to ramp up the suspense instead of spoiling your suspense? Well, you can put it into dialogue, like a character makes this offhanded comment or a joke that makes you think like, huh. And this is important that, okay, your dialogue definitely needs to be tight most of the time. So usually you don't have any superfluous stuff like little jokes. So that gives your reader, when you make that promise to your reader that all dialogue means something, they can think, huh, there's something going on here. You can use metaphors or imagery or simile or allegory. You can use all those fancy literary devices. You can have this symbolism that your reader's thinking like, this has got to mean something, right? Or you can have something that's like a historical anecdote or something that happened before, or something somebody says about, oh, this reminds me of blah, blah. And then that can be foreshadowing, right? Or you can use your descriptions of the setting, right? You're talking about, these stairs. Like, look at the movie A Quiet Place, where you've got the stairs and there's a scene where you show the character walking down the stairs and you see that there's a nail sticking out of the stairs. That is massive foreshadowing because you're thinking to yourself, and also it's very suspenseful because you're like, oh no, what's going to happen if the character steps on this nail and screams? What possibly else could happen with this nail? What's this nail going to do? It's important because the writer or the filmographers in this sense, they actually made the audience confident that every detail is for a reason. But what's it for? It's that mystery. It's really great. Now, you can also use character traits or memories or events. So you can use, instead of foreshadowing, it's not really foreshadowing, but you can use flashbacks, remembering events, remembering somebody's behavior in the past. And then that is kind of a sort of foreshadowing because, this person is going to do this or this is going to happen, right? And if it seems too hard to do this foreshadowing stuff right off the bat, I think you're right. It is really hard to do this right off the bat. It is so hard. Like, you're trying to get your story down in the rough draft. The second draft is a great opportunity to introduce this in the right way. When you're reading what you've written in the first draft, now you can see the possibilities because you've got the main story down. This is a much better way to do it. It is too hard to challenge yourself to put in just the right amount of suspense in a first draft. No, get your story down and then you'll start to see the possibilities. And this is why I always tell my writing clients, create an outline from your rough draft. This is what's going to save you because you're going to see the possibilities and the opportunities for suspense, foreshadowing, flashbacks. Flashbacks are definitely a great way to open up new sources of suspense. They can flash out those character backstories. You can kind of slowly introduce these little surprising elements that are part of your character's backstory. So that can start to create some kind of a plot twist, or it can start to reveal that, hey, maybe my character is a little bit of an unreliable narrator, right? So that's a really interesting thing that you can do with flashbacks as well. Remember, we're saying that we are teasing information. How are we revealing information? How are we withholding information? This is the crucial thing of how one writes good suspense. Right? You could know that there's some kind of dark secret in someone's past, keep hinting that, and we're only going to find it out when it's most impactful. That's really important. With suspense, you are playing with your reader's expectations, especially their expectations that come with time. Like, they know the information's coming, but they don't know when. That's really, really important, right? Now, some people use surprise in addition with their suspense. And surprise is fun. Like when there's this plot twist or when you're expecting something to happen much later on and then surprise, it happens earlier, or surprise, this new thing just happened. That can be interesting, but I don't want you to have that too often without some kind of foreshadowing, because I think that surprises that come out of nowhere and that are kind of random, accidental, that can start to wear the reader down because we want causality. We want things to happen that have been set up. We want things that are logical within the world of your story. We want things that the main character pretty much brought upon themselves. I think that's really important. So how do you amp up the suspense in your book? I'm going to tell you all the ways. You can do some mini scene cliffhangers. So I like to write one scene, one chapter, do these little cliffhangers at the end of each chapter where the reader's like, wait, what's about to happen? Or how is this related? Or what's going on? That's a really fun way to keep the reader reading until the next page or the next chapter. Very important. Keep the tension high, right? That question of what's going on. That means keeping the stakes high. Never let the reader forget why these things are important. Compress a story's timeline so that the characters are under more pressure. And also you want to create these situations where characters could succeed if only they had this, or if only they had that, if only they knew this, or if only they had this tool. Craft those situations where they're unable to get that information. So under one of my pen names, I am writing this book where my character doesn't know the true identity of the person she's supposed to be dating. And every time she's about to find out or someone's about to tell her, something happens to keep her from knowing that. So that keeps the suspense going. You see what I mean? Keeps the suspense going in this book, even though it's not a life or death situation, but it is really important, for that character. Because if she doesn't find out who this person is, how can she have a great relationship? So that's really important. Think about the different types of suspense in different types of genre. So in romance, for example, it's going to be will they or won't they be able to be together at the end? Even though you kind of know in romance, the promise is that the couple is going to be together at the end, but you want to know, oh my God, when's it going to happen? How's it finally going to happen? How are they going to get through these obstacles? Very important. In some kind of an adventure, the suspense is going to be, are they going to find the thing they're looking for? Is their quest going to be successful? Are they going to get past the dragon or the other, kind of challenges that are in their way? And are they going to lose anyone along the way? That can be really terrible. In a more psychological novel, it's going to be, is my character going to lose themselves, lose their loved ones, lose what's important to them along the way? So remember that suspense really depends on your genre very, very much. Now let's talk about some of the huge mistakes in suspense. I've hinted at some of these, but I just want to kind of recap. The first thing is red herrings gone wrong. So red herrings are these misleading clues, these clues that you think are going to mean something and they go nowhere. That can be a little bit fun if done right, but you don't want to let those things dominate your story or detract from the main suspense, because really you want that satisfaction. If you do this to your readers too many times, they're going to be like, this is boring. I'm not going to pay attention to this because I know it might not lead anywhere. So that's really important. Having overly long descriptions of settings or characters or things like that cuts down on the urgency as well. So it kind of cuts down on your suspense. So you need to know that your pacing is key. Slowing things down before a pivotal moment is key for sure, but then you want things moving along. So you always want things happening and then have the psychological fallout be where you have a longer description. Having a long description of the setting or the character that doesn't really lead anywhere, Another thing, having too many characters or too many storylines, this is going to dilute your suspense as well. This is going to make the reader not know who they're supposed to care about. And they're going to be like, can we get back to the main story, please? There was a book I read recently where I literally skipped everything that was from the B story because it came in too late and it didn't even matter to me. It didn't matter to the main thing and it wasn't even really tied in, or if it was, I didn't care enough. So that's really important. Think about those stakes and think about when there's too many characters. Another thing is too much lack of action. Like, I want things to be happening along with that thread. So many people try to pack in all this research, all this information, all this backstory, and you lose the action. And now we don't really know or care. And then be really careful with your clues. You want to ask your beta readers, are my clues too obvious? Am I spelling it out too much? That's really, really important. I talked about in this episode, the deus ex machina, when things happen by accident, this coincidence, this incredible miracle. I don't really want that to happen after I've been in suspense this whole time. I don't want this stupid accident to happen and be like, oh, everything's resolved thanks to this person showing up at the last minute for no reason. Not cool. Unless I find out that my character actually set that up to happen. Cool. The other thing I cannot stand is when the villain kind of reveals all about their motivations and all this stuff at the end. It's like this long, like before the villain gets killed off or before the villain falls into the pit of hell, they have this like 2-page thing where they're like, "Mwahaha, I did this because my mother was killed by a dragon that was unleashed by you, and I hate this, and I hate all people like that, and I did this, and I did that." Dude, I don't want that. I want to pretty much have almost all the pieces of the puzzle, and then at the end have some explosive reveal that just puts it all together. I know that sounds challenging. Guess what? It is. But having your villain reveal all is not going to be a satisfying way to do it. Another thing is cliche plot twists. You know, it was the evil twin. They were alive all along. The damaged woman, has a double identity. This sort of thing, it's been done to death. It's a cliche, yes, because maybe it was a cool idea for a minute, but now you don't get to write that anymore unless you put a new twist on it. Very important. And finally, the hero who's magically impervious or so lucky that you never doubt that they're going to live forever. Like Indiana Jones never gets killed. He gets beaten up pretty badly, but never that badly. Now with Indiana Jones, this is an adventure movie. And so we care about other things other than will he live? But, when they're a little bit too lucky, a little bit too impervious, then that starts to break down our disbelief. And it starts to also make us not fear for what's going to go on for them so badly, because you're like, okay, even if they don't get to their goal, I don't really care because they're so impervious, so lucky, so bulletproof that they're probably not going to care that much. They're not going to be very, very hurt. So this is something else that I'm going to be talking about further in my bonus materials. So if you're in the Writing Coach on Demand program, you're going to want to head over there to figure out this interesting psychological hack to creating more suspense. And if you're not in Writing Coach on Demand, it's not too late. If you're listening to this when it's coming out, you can still get access to that bonus episode after you sign up. And I'll make damn sure, if you request it nicely, to get you the bonus materials, i.e. checklists, writing prompts, and worksheets that are going to help you out. And of course, if you sign up for the From Idea to Publish in 6 Months course that's coming up soon, you are going to have all of this stuff as well. So go check out www.creativeandwritingcoach.com and you get to see me, your writing coach. You can sign up for a 15-minute informational call for free to see what kind of stuff you get with coaching and to meet me and know if this is all right for you, because it's important that you feel supported in your writing career. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you taking the time, and I hope this helped out. I think it will. And I look forward to being with you next time on the How to Be an Author podcast. If you have any pressing writing-related questions or would like to be featured on the How to Be an Author podcast, please feel free to reach out on my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com.